For many in Hollywood, the 91st Academy Awards was a huge night for celebration. This year's Oscars marked a number of big milestones as a remarkable amount of women and people of color achieved historic wins. How do this year's Oscars fare in terms of diversity? How do we look at the political dilemma? Alibaba Pictures is one of the investors behind the Green Book, but can we say it's an Oscar win for China? To discuss these issues and more, I'm very happy to be joined in the Beijing studio by Professor Teng Jimeng from Beijing Foreign Studies University and Professor David Moser from Peking University. We shall also talk to Joanna Cheng, filmmaker and intercultural critic from New York via satellite. That's our topic. This is a dialogue. I'm Yang Rui. Welcome to our discussion here, gentlemen. Sunday's Academy Awards drew 29.6 million viewers around the world, an increase from 2018, the previous year, but it's still the second worst Oscar ratings in history. I'm surprised. Jimeng, what's happened?
Well, many things happens. Well, one thing that happens so very badly is that it's a hostless Oscar. I mean, in this sense, it's going to be a very bad thing to happen. Secondly, I think once again, see, there is a general lack of, for example, the real issue blockbusters. And thirdly, I would say lots of issues that is plaguing Hollywood. For example, the ripple effects of Harvey Weinstein thing, and also the Me Too movements. And most immediate thing is that Kevin, the potential host, is now actually being nailed down and had to step down from hosting role because of his homophobic tweeting surfaced. And so all that added, I think, really make it some kind of boring and also controversial one.
I think also because the media landscape is changing a little bit, and some of the big media productions that are garnering a lot more attention have moved to television. So you have lots of HBO things like Game of Thrones and other kinds of things that they're almost competing with Hollywood in terms of their influence. So there's a little bit of a fracturing of the market. It's not so longer, movies are not like the only magic thing now. It's in other media as well.
So great changes are taking place in American pop culture. Let me go to Joanna. What's your take?
Well, the truth of the matter, let it be revealed. I think the cinema right now has become politicized because the viewership drastically, decreased. Partially or greatly, it's because it's politics. Because Hollywood right now has become the platform for the far left sometimes to make their political statements. So we as a viewer and the conservative viewers feel very being turned off, a huge majority of the viewers, and they just could care less about this kind of politicized entertainment. So that's quite unfortunate. Oscar was not set up for politics. It was the celebration of art and science. Although
do you
every
guys
film
agree?
Could be political, but never before we have all this.
Yes, David and Jimeng, do you agree that
Yes?
Joanna says Oscar has very much become a platform of a political theater? David.
Yeah, I think particularly this year it suffered from that. The fact that so much of it, even if it's not spoken, openly on the stage, there's always in the back of people's mind the issues of color, of race, gender, sexual harassment, and I think that it makes the people who are on the stage speaking always feel a little cautious, always on guard that they don't say something that will get them into trouble. And at the same time, the audience feels a little uncomfortable because it doesn't have the same relaxed kind of open-ended feeling. But it is true, the Oscars, Hollywood in general, is definitely occupied by the left. So their interests and their sorts of obsessions sort of tend to dominate the evening.
Yeah, I agree. I think it is a highly politically charged Oscar this year. But then once again, like David pointed out, it's a tradition. I mean, with the leftists, with the sometimes extreme leftists, for example, occupying central stage. And think about one event that characterized Marlon Brando in that very year. I mean, he even refused to go up and pick up the prize because he thought that Hollywood treated the Native Americans so badly. And so many things like that happened. And also lots of actors and actresses choose to make that very stage as a kind of a forum for debate of national issues.
Joanna?
Yes, Well, you have famous actors like Robert De Niro or Meryl Streep, like making such dramatic statements, which does not really, in my mind, reflect reality. They may be great actors or actresses playing a fictional role, but I think they should get more in touch with the actual reality. But unfortunately, this year, Spike Lee come out making certain statements. It is so drastic, he's even calling for action. He's calling for action for the election. So that is how drastic or how, I mean, aggressive these the so-called artists has become. I think this is just this is just too much for our audience, so we could live without it, so we could be healthier.
Well, when we review history, Joanna, it comes as no surprise that celebrities or public figures from Hollywood would be involved in politics, such as Jane Fonda, who went to Vietnam to protest against the war. Now, this time around, don't you think there's the ongoing crusade in Hollywood against the presidency of Donald Trump regarding particularly the issue of a war between Mexico and the United States?
Yeah, what about it? What would you like to say about it? I think it's not the artist's role to exactly criticize when they do not have a reality check. What's wrong with the wall? National interest, national security is very important. Illegal immigration is an issue. We need to be stopping them. You should care about America, its own people's safety, versus try to please the illegal immigrants. Of course, not everybody is illegal. Being compassionate to immigrants is good, but ignoring your own people's safety is, I think that's criminal.
Well, we are going too far a bit,
what's the priority here?
Politics is getting too much into our discussion. Let's come back to examine.
Yeah,
let's come back to examine whether we can still be art for art's sake. In fact, Hollywood has been known for years for being politically correct in many ways, to conform with the mainstream and elite ideology and value orientation. David, do you share the same concern?
Yes, I think it in some way it affects the message. It sort of pollutes the art, or influences the perception of the arts. I was sort of struck by the fact that I think we'll probably talk about this, the movie The Green Book was so controversial that people immediately had some reactions to it. They thought it was sort of regressive because it saseemed to picture the had this sort of white savior complex in the movies. But I think that interferes with the problem of just looking at the movie on the basis of what it really is and the fact that it's based upon a true story. It is complex, the roles are reversed, but it was actually a historical event. The movie may not have treated it accurately, but immediately because it has this black-white racial issue, the tribes, the left and right tribes, certainly separate into their separate corners and start addressing the movie according to the political orientations of the people and not according to the actual story itself. So the movie can't just be a complex, interesting work of art. It has to be a statement and you have to stand on the left or the right of it. Right. And it's like, well, why even go to the movie? Why not just sit at home and get online and bash other people, right?
And what do we think of the gender representation? Look at this. Though all male categories were still very much present at awards show this year at the Academy Awards on Sunday night, several women did win. Do you think females are gaining more momentum in the film industry?
Well, yes. I mean, if you look at these great films actually being exhibited throughout the year, I mean, one film that stands out quite a bit is The Wife, that we are able to check out here in China, and also in the Black Panther. Many of these African-American female actresses are involved, and in this very Oscars, for example, Regina King actually has been extremely well in starring this very role, the best supporting role, actress role in this very film. So the issue of race has been always in a central stage, and I think that Oscar is very responsive to this very issue, and especially the gender issue, and in this very particular year.
Joanna, what do you think of glories of females in this Oscar award? Do you think they win big because of the Me Too movement? Is that the impact of the Me Too movement?
I am trying not to bring politics into this cinema discussion, but it's a good question. I didn't see a big win for women this time. I think historically, women has played a crucial trailblazing role in cinema history. Before the D.W. Griffin is Birth of the Nation, we already have Alice de Blanche or Loris Weber. They are the mother of the cinema, it seems to me. And then we have other Hollywood actors in front of the camera, and also female director has been booming. But it's not enough, and it's only about a dozen or 2 dozen, and I don't see it's a big win for women this time. Although certain film like The Wife is a great is a great film, but she did not win Glenn Clove, and so therefore I feel like it is still pretty much male-dominated, perhaps more diverse in terms of racial diversity. But for women, they still have somewhere or some way to go, especially from the directing point of view. We need more female directors, not just actors, which is not in the driver's seat. So let's try to do something soon.
Thank you so much, guys. Obviously, our discussion today in the studio about Oscar is a little bit politically charged, but we won't apologize so much. We'll come back after the short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Let's look at why Asian representation is underestimated and missing in this Oscar award. David, is that an issue? Or Asians have been talking smart about this and we have read too much into this issue?
Well, I mean, we sort of forget the fact that actually Asians and Asian actors have made great progress. I'm not sure why the film Rich Crazy Asians wasn't talked about more, but I mean, there has been an influx of Asians. It's not going to reach the same proportions as some of the other minorities that have been in the U.S. for a long time. There's certainly a market for it, and maybe we'll talk about this animated film in a minute. But I mean, we all know that you know, Chinese-themed movies or movies with Asian actors can be very, very successful. It's just a matter of how you do it, and the question is whether or not Asian necessarily includes, or let's say the Chinese must include mainland China, because the Asian, the diaspora is very powerful in filmmaking in Hong Kong, the U.S., and there's a lot of
Japanese, Koreans, Malaysians,
Koreans, and a lot of American-born or overseas-born Chinese that are very creative and we shouldn't expect that their art form and their art is going to, quote, represent all of Asia or even represent China. They have their own viewpoint, they have their own lifestyle, they have their own history. So I think at this point, moving forward, we should stop injecting politics and racial equality into it and let the artists create art. It's going to be complex. It's going to make people mad. That's
so
what
Joanna,
art is.
David may just go to your point about staying away from politics. So what do you make of his response?
Well, what I'm trying to say is, it's just because you're Asian, you have to be mentioned in Oscar. You know why you're not mentioned? Because your film is not good enough. Yes. So don't think you're Asian or non-Asian or black or white or purple. If you make a better film, it will be mentioned. It's worth celebrating that the Crazy Rich Asian is the first time all Asian cast. That is a milestone that we Asians
Pretty wise remarks, Joanna.
But
congratulations. The issue is how do you define good filming?
Good.
How do you define? I mean, sometimes in this post-truth world, we have to give a redefinition, new definition to whatever that has been taken for granted for centuries and years. What are the standards you consider necessary for good filming?
A good cinema is a good storytelling, a moving story that's inspiring. It's the story itself with Crazy Asian, although it is a very, a very popular cinema, it's just not touching enough. The storytelling technique or the maturity of the director is yet to be improved. Another film that's being mentioned called Searching. That film is, again, I saw both of them. They're just not like masterful enough. They're a good film, and congratulations to all directors, but it's just not masterful enough. We have Roma, That is a beautiful film, very masterful. You know why? Because it is deeply personal. It is a beautifully, story is beautiful. It's very authentic. It is very sincere. But right now, the other two Chinese film or Asian film, it's just, to me, it's just not like cinematic enough. Not moving enough, not inspiring enough.
I agree. I think I agree with.
But it's good progress.
I think I agree with Joanne said. First thing first, I think the Crazy Rich Asians doesn't represent the Chinese solely, mainland Chinese. It should be representing all supposedly Asians out there. In fact, the film is based on that book about Asians in Singapore. I mean, in that sense, I think racial representations is not supposed to be an issue to be kind of included here. But secondly, I agree. I mean, the film has to be good. Crazy Rich Asians may not be very kind of up to the standards and very artistic standards. It is I think it is kind of a very fancy film with advocating that kind of a crass materialism. The acting of some of these actors may not be up to the standard, even though the Jimmy O Yang, the young rising Chinese American guy, is supposed to be a star. But then, see, it's not really a good storytelling. I mean, like Joanne said.
Here is a more spicy issue for all of you, Gianna, Jimeng, and David. These years, China is accused of being assertive in many areas, in many ways, such as, for example, military build-up in the Southwest China Sea, as well as the latest release of a movie called The Wandering Earth. Now, it's a sci-fi movie, and we have learned a lot from Hollywood, and yet so many Chinese moviegoers pin their hopes on the not just the box office success, but perhaps a big win in Hollywood. But this is a controversial issue. David, I'd like to have your analysis about what's going to happen to The Wandering Earth. Shortcomings, vulnerabilities, or potentials?
Well, I think for me the interesting thing about Wandering Earth that it was, as you say, really a Hollywood movie in Chinese clothing. All the elements were there, all the schlock and pathos and the son and father relationship, it was all there.
Excuse me, would some of the skeptical audiences in the United States accuse the sci-fi movie of Wandering Earth of being industrial espionage?
Espionage? How so?
Because it's a copycat. It's a copy. No. It's a copy of Hollywood. Because you said it's a Hollywood movie in the Chinese clothing. Don't you think this can also be compared somehow to?
Yes, but the Hollywood
espionage.
The Hollywood film language has become the world language.
Okay.
And they're willing to
universal language. That's something that Americans like so much.
But what I found interesting and I actually liked about the movie was I was watching this movie and I said, okay, here we go, another movie like Independence Day, and those movies sort of come from Hollywood, and it's always a small band of determined Americans who save the planet single-handedly, and the other countries don't matter. I was watching this movie and saying, this is interesting. The United States doesn't even exist.
Included.
They're completely irrelevant.
There's
not a single. They don't even mention the United States, and the president of the Earth government is French. So I thought this is great. This is Hollywood turned on its head with China now as the big heroes, and I actually enjoyed seeing a nationalistic Hollywood film from the Chinese point of view. I thought it was wonderful. Not necessarily a good movie, but it was very culturally interesting.
Is that a mutiny revolution or uprising against Hollywood?
It is a mutiny. It is absolutely a cinematic mutiny against, where this film is supposed to be come from. In fact, yes, like David said, this is supposed, The Wandering Earth is an ensemble of heroes. Working hard, relying on hope and saving the planet that we all live in. But then it's not supposed to be the American lone hero, who doesn't know at the beginning that he's going to be the hero, for example. And then the hero emerges in the process of saving himself, saving his family, and saving his community. But in this one, it's all about this community of heroes. The French, the Russians, remember that affable Russians, the cosmonauts actually working together with these Chinese astronauts and Chinese heroes. And the idea was also Chinese. And think about these giant thrusters. 10,000 thrusters actually propelling Earth away from this very solar system.
Audiences around the world, Jan, are impressed by Kung Fu Panda, Sense and Sensibility, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. These movies do have the representation of Asians somehow. But still, people feel ashamed in the mainland, in particular, about the wide gap between Hollywood and our own level of movie production. So let's look at vulnerabilities and shortcomings that need to be overcome by mainland filmmakers. Can you pinpoint some of the challenges that we are facing?
Are you talking to me? All right. I think the Chinese filmmaker right now have much more, actually a relaxed environment to create a lot of technically advanced film. But creatively, they still really have a long way to go. So we were just talking about Wandering Earth, and the story itself, and it's just not moving enough. But politically, it is very nationalistic. So it almost politicized in a way. So as Chinese filmmaker, I think if they could be innovative, they don't need to learn a Hollywood way of storytelling. Look at Roma again, by Alfonso Cuarón. His way of telling a story, he never have a script, and he doesn't tell the actors what's happening, but he delivered a deeply sensitive, intimate portrait of a family. The Chinese filmmaker need to be innovative, learn the technique of Hollywood, but you've already learned. Now what? Learn how to tell a good story. You have to be brave to be true, to be courageous, to break through certain taboos. If you keep having this propaganda kind of scary mode, you can never produce a good story. So political environment need to be loosened so that the filmmaker could be more like creative, but filmmakers should be courageous. And I think there's a great time for creativity right now. It's just not enough, not brave enough, I feel.
Joanna, there is a big relief here in the Beijing studio about what you're talking about. It seems you are not so divorced from the real realities in China when it comes to why we have been so disadvantaged in turning out very good movies to compare with Hollywood. David, what do you think are the shortcomings that need to be improved, that need to be overcome before we can hand over, we can come up with wonderful movies that can impress the rest of the world?
I think China has its own problem, which is movies that take the international stage. They become part of China's soft power push. So again, they can't just be a movie. It has to be something that somehow speaks to that soft power. And we see from these films that like you said, Kung Fu Panda, the controversial thing about that film was that a lot of Chinese audiences looked and said, look, those are all Chinese elements, pandas and Kung Fu, and yet Disney made it. Why aren't we making that film? They're taking our soft power or the essence of our culture, and they're selling it to the world. Why can't we do that? So I think probably there's many reasons. Some of it is budget. Some of it is the technicians and the Hollywood tradition that has all this massive directors and experts who can make these films technically great. But then you also have the fact that the filmmakers are sort of overshadowed or sort of overwhelmed by this requirement to make something that will reflect the real China or reflect the soft power. When Disney made this panda image, they weren't really worried that the image of the panda. It just had to be cute, funny, fat, But if you did this in China, immediately the directors and the script writers were saying, "Oh, I'm not sure we could present a panda that way. I mean, what if people object that it?" And so the movie wouldn't come out as free and funny as it would in the Disney version.
Well,
so you got to get beyond politics.
The imagination in the domain of art is so important regarding Kung Fu Panda, for example. Kung Fu is the last thing that may be closely related to the image of a panda. But Hollywood, Disney got it down and did the job beautifully. That was so impressive. So what's missing in our culture regarding the prospects of having very prosperous movie industry?
Well, I would echo our two panelists. I think the thing that lacks most is the active imagination, the creativity on the parts of the Chinese filmmakers, especially screenplay writers. I think writers have a key role in this very particular process. Writers should be well versed in firstly and most importantly, in the Chinese culture, in Chinese tradition. To know the world, you have to know your own culture and your own tradition. For example, if you want to know, if you want to profess the greatness of Kung Fu, you have to know Kung Fu. And if you want to profess the greatness of Panda, you have to know Panda. But then at the same time, you need to be creative. Take Ang Lee, for example. Ang Lee's Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon successfully and also creatively worked both Kung Fu and also Taoism into that very film. It was Lee that gave this very Taoist sentiment to this very great martial arts film. And plus, this very intimacy, the great emotion, the great love story in this very film. And I think Chinese indie filmmakers are doing the best. I mean, take some of these, the most recent film by Wang Xiaoshuai that is now in Berlin, for example, So Long, My Son. It's about, I would consider it China's Roma. I would consider it China's Roma for that very intimacy, for that very reach back into his own childhood.
Before we conclude this very meaningful brainstorming about the movie industry in China in comparison with Hollywood, Joanna, may I have your attention, Joanna? It's you.
Yeah.
Well,
I am with you.
In the United States, Joanna, in the United States, we do have the First Amendment to protect freedom of expression, the media, assembly, blah, blah. But in Hollywood, we do feel and sense the impact of commercialization. And in Chinese vocabulary, we have 钱能解决的问题都不是问题. So money could be used to fix whatever problems. That focuses on the issue of a budget. Do you think big budget will inevitably guarantee huge success of box office?
Oh, absolutely no. Art should have its own soul. That is to be true to your to life. And your story has to be so touching, so authentic, and it's money. Look at Wandering Earth. It's a unique phenomenon. It's full of, although it's not big budget, but it's appeared to be a big special effect film. But money is not a guarantee for any box office. Good storytelling is still the golden rule to go. Jimeng said beautifully, we need to go back to our tradition. We have 5,000 years, 10,000 years of resources. Our, cultural icons has been exploited by Hollywood. We should go back to our own source to create more imaginative film. Right now, the sci-fi film is being explored, but to me, Wandering Earth is not sci-fi. It's a disaster film set in the space. So I'm serious, and we need to be, as a filmmaker, we need to go back to our resources, or
No, Joanne, I think it is a sci-fi film.
What is not sci-fi enough for me?
Okay.
Well, it's a good debate, but thank you so much for being part of this meaningful dialogue. It's also, it also means more brainstorming will be coming to figure out what is a sci-fi film. We don't have to go back to 5,000 years in Chinese history. We need to go back to what happened 4 decades ago, emancipation of the mind, before we give the simple answer about why it's so difficult for the Chinese movie industry. I'll see you next time. Goodbye.